Good evening, everybody. First of all, let me start by thanking Faith Foundation for inviting me here to be part of this event. This is about the second or third time I'll be involving myself in Faith Foundation Alumni Conference. Economists will tell you that one thing that will be a pointer to a country that is not developing or has not developed is the contribution of SMEs to its GDP. Statistics has it that in Africa as a whole, the contribution of SMEs to the various countries' GDP oscillates between 10 and 15, whereas in developed countries, they oscillate over 40%. So it is for this reason that I think Faith Foundation is doing a great job by trying to pull up SMEs through capacity development. And I thank Nike and her group, or her team, for the good job they are doing. And I thank the entrepreneurs or budding entrepreneurs that are here for being futuristic in the contributions they shall be making towards the development of Nigeria. Now, I'm expected to talk or to be talking on funding for scale. Like you have heard, I work for GroFin. Naturally, I'll have to start with GroFin and perhaps tangentially mention other sources of funding for SMEs. GroFin is a child of necessity. I don't know if that makes any sense. GroFin is a child of necessity. Is circumstantial in the sense that it was sometime in 2002 that some Africans thought about solving the problem of SMEs in Africa. They tried to find out why SMEs aren't doing well in Africa. And what they did was to institute two studies, one by Harvard and the other by SPDC. And they all come up with some findings, some of which are that the challenges SMEs have in Africa, not just in Nigeria, the challenges they have include the following: limited access to technology, and we know the impact that could have in the survivability of any business. Poor infrastructure. Certainly, if you are in business like I know you are, you find yourself providing road, providing water, providing electricity, and all this impact to the survivability of that business. Of course, insufficient skills basis, lack of market linkages, lack of operational and management skills. All these are the findings of these two separate studies that were instituted. And armed with that, in 2004, the founders of GroFin decided to team up with some individuals, organizations, and countries towards finding solutions to all these that have been talked about. So what they did was the individuals, institutions, and countries provided funding for GroFin to administer to SMEs. That's actually how it started. And the objective was finance for growth. So that's how actually the name came about. Growth finance, growth finance, GroFin. The three first letters of the two words formed that name. So that was why I said that GroFin is actually a child of necessity. Okay? So if you drop the business triangle, and you segment it into three, and you have the apex, the middle, and the base, what you would notice is that those businesses that occupy the apex part of the pyramid, the Dangotes of this world, and so on and so forth, those ones can easily access funding from the conventional banks, equity investors, both private and institutional, whereas those are the base of the pyramid. They can easily access from microfinance banks. So you have the missile middle. So the founders of GroFin and the providers of funds decided where to focus on was actually on the missing middle. So that was exactly why GroFin is focusing on the missing middle. The missing middle of businesses, they are a little too small to access funding from institutional investors, for instance, and they're again too big to go to microfinance banks. Of course, I'm mindful of the fact that right now, you have SMEs that actually go to microfinance banks. But structurally, that's not what should have been. But that was brought about by the skewed nature of our economy. So the owner of the fund brought out 3 criteria that would determine whether you are actually in the missing middle. And the 3 criteria are this. 1, the number of employees you have in your business. Do you have up to 150 employees in your business? If you do have, you are not an SME. If you have up to 150 employees in your business, you are not an SME. The second criterion is your asset base. If your asset base is up to $6 million, you are not an SME. Now, the third one is your total annual turnover. If your total annual turnover is up to $15 billion, you are not an SME. Okay, so maybe the question would be, among us here, whose business is employing more than 150 people, has an annual turnover of more than $15 million, and has an asset base of up to $6 million. Is there anyone here? Okay, if there's none, what that automatically means that everybody here is qualified to be an SME. And I say kudos to you, because the development of this country is actually in your hands. If you are able to aggregately come together to contribute up to 40% to the country's GDP, Nigeria will no longer be where they are. But can they? If they cannot, why? I think that's actually a major question we need to ask. And another thing that came out, when GroFin started in 2004, in 2007, it bettered in Nigeria. We have had to analyze over 9,000 entrepreneurs GroFin has had to support with what we call investment support. And the findings are scary. It was discovered that 72% of them have no formal accounting system. And you know the implication of that? 43 of them do not comply with local regulations. Of course, what that means is that if you fell foul of any local condition or local regulation and government strikes at you, your investment is at risk. And 66% of them lack environmental safety and governance standards. So they don't care how their activities impact on their environment. And 57 of them have no business plan. So it's actually happenstance. Get doing whatever you want to do. Has it occurred to you? Have you seen another person doing it? Go ahead and do it. It doesn't matter whether you succeed or not. So 57% of them don't have business plans. And then 63% of capital in the over 9,000 entrepreneurs we analyzed. As much as 63% of the capital is at risk. Any wonder then why over 70–80% of SMEs fail after 3 years of existence? I'm not sure with this, anybody will be wondering why it is so. So these are the things GroFin and its founders decided to address. They felt if Africa will ever be pulled out of its poverty strata, then there is need for this to be addressed. So it decided to do things a little differently. And part of what they decided to do include business support, investment business support. And what we try to do in this is to take a look. Oh, by the way, GroFin right now is in 15 countries. And in every country, I'm sure would agree that the environment is unique, But whatever business you want to do may actually compare to what that same business in that other country. So what we try to do is that in every country where we have our offices what we do is to try to identify the uniqueness, the environment, the expertise. So we therefore have what we call industry experts in these countries. So if somebody in Nigeria wants funding from GroFin, the first thing we will do will be to get you investment ready. And when we say investment readiness, what we're actually trying to do is to make sure that we guard against all those things enumerated that are the challenges SMEs face and that are contributory to the failures of over 80% of SMEs 3 years after they have started. So we started by ensuring that we'll give you a business support, and in business support what we do is to understand what business you're doing, why does it succeed in other countries, why do they fail even in some countries? Is there any lesson to be learned for this entrepreneur that is about to venture into this? What is the viability of this entrepreneur before you even begin to talk of the viability of the business itself? It is only when you are satisfied that the viability is something you can go along with, both the entrepreneur and the business. It's only then that you will say that that entrepreneur or that business is actually investment ready. And that's when you would think of investing in them. And what we also do differently, collateral. If you go to a conventional bank to borrow money, one thing you cannot get away from is that you must collateralize whatever fund you want to take at least 120%. So what GroFin decided to do, better you listen to this. 2007, when GroFin came to Nigeria, all GroFin was interested in is the viability of the business. The viability of the business. Once it is viable, if you have collateral, that's fine. But if you don't have, let's fund the business. It worked in other climes before GroFin came to Nigeria. GroFin tried it in 2007. By 2009, these chaps voted with the funds. They voted with their feet. So it is for that reason that, yes, collateral. We still ask for collateral now, but the way we are asking collateral as a conventional bank would, we are asking for 60, 70% cover of whatever money or fund we invested in your business. So that is what we are doing differently, because it was also found that that requirement is debilitating for budding SMEs. It makes it impossible for them to be able to access funding. And then we also look at your repayment structure. You know, when we're in the banking industry, when funding is given to a business, all we want to hear is that at the end of the year, you pay down. If you want again, we can give it to you the next year. In other words, it's usually short-term. It is short-term fund that you would get there. But what we combine in GroFin is this. If you want investment to last for 2 years, GroFin is not the place to go to, and we'll tell you that. Our investments are for businesses that require it for between 3 years and 8 years. That's what we do. Now, secondly, the repayment structure. The repayment structure is based on your cash flow. What's the cash flow of the business? It does not make sense, for instance, I give money to a school that receives funding termly. Let's say a secondary school. It is every term that students pay fees. Therefore, that's when they receive their inflows. It doesn't make sense for me to say that I must structure your repayment on a monthly basis. Then that's recipe for failure. So we align your repayment structure with your cash flow, the cash flow of your business. So that's one thing we do differently. Now, the business support that I talked about, you have 3 forms of it: pre-investment, investment, and post-investment. What I described earlier was the pre-investment, making sure that this business is actually investment ready. In other words, is it viable? Is the entrepreneur viable? Has the entrepreneur got the needed character? Has he got the needed knowledge, experience, expertise to be able to carry through the business he's interested in? And in what sector is he in? Is it a sector that is bedeviled with risks that will not enable him reap the benefits of his investment? If these are those that are inherent in that business, we'll have, first of all, to address those issues with him. And he has to agree with them. When he agrees, then we say that that business is investment ready. That's when we will invest in it. And one thing that goes with that, we talk of appropriate risk financing. Let me share this. 2 days ago, somebody sent me a proposal. He was in need of $5 million to invest in a jetty and working capital and the rest of them. So I had to respond saying, unfortunately, the fund we are managing, by the way, the terms and conditions are actually dependent on what the owners of the fund says you will do. That the fund we are managing does not allow us to give anything more than $1.5 million. Okay, 2 days later, he wrote me again. As a matter of fact, I can do with 1.5 million. That's coming down from $5 million. Okay, you know the implication of that. If he steps down from $5 million to $1.5 million, because that's what I say we can give, it becomes inappropriate. That is no longer appropriate funding. If you invest 1.5 million there, it will get stuck because it will not accomplish all he wanted to do. So what GroFin tries to do, we establish appropriate funding for that business. That's when you are investment ready. So now, at the time we are investing, that's the business. If we determine that instead of 1.5, for instance, what you actually need is 1.4, you don't need 1.5. Or you apply for $100,000, I would say instead of $400,000, what you actually need is $150,000. That's the appropriate funding you require for that business. That will enable you to see it through. It doesn't make sense we give you some money and midway you get stuck. And if you get stuck, our fund is at risk. And you yourself, you'll be in trouble. So pre-investment, investment, which is where we determine the appropriate finance that you require, and of course post-investment. We don't leave you because we have given money to you. When we're in banking, once you have disbursed, all you will be doing, keep a tab on him to make sure he's still alive, he has not died, and at the appropriate time, you go back to make sure that he's still living in the house he told you he was living in, and that he pays quite due. But in GroFin, no, we don't do that. If we invest, post-investment, we handhold you, we link you up, even with market, we give you links, market links, that will enable you even export your products. That is one advantage we have in being in 15 countries. We have had situations where somebody in South Africa had to call us to let us know that he has a customer in South Africa whose supplier or off-taker is in Nigeria. So what we do is we locate those people, and then that way, the person in South Africa is enjoying the fact that he has been linked up with other people to whom those items could be useful to. So we call that GroFin solution. GroFin solution amounts to applying appropriate risk finance with pre- and post-investment business support to develop sustainable, high-impact SMEs. An SME that will be there today, will be there tomorrow, and will be there even after the founder has disappeared. That's what we do. Now, what are the criteria for qualification? First of all, you must be an SME. I've already described the three major things that will qualify you. Any two of those three qualifies you as a target market for GroFin. So you must be an SME, and then the business must have the ability to grow. It must be scalable. And it's interesting that today's talk is actually on funding for scale. So that business must be such that would grow. And of course, it must have impact. Impact is very, very important to us, which is why we say that we are impact investors. we look at the impact our fund would have. For instance, we ask how many hands will be employed by $100,000. And we peg it that at least 10 new people must be employed. So it is important to us the impact it has. It is important to us what your activity, the effect your activity would have on the environment. Would it be such that we create gully erosion? Will it be such that we now create a situation that will have environmental pollution? Or will it be, is it such that when you embark on it, or whatever it is you are doing, that you are taking care to make sure that you have ways of preserving the environment? These are things that are very important to us. We believe that the earth is ours to use today, but we must use it such that those new generations that will come in after us will still have it there for them to use. So these are the three main criteria. If you are an SME, if your business is scalable, in other words, it has the ability to grow, and then of course it has impact, then that qualifies you to be, what do you call it, our target market. Now we have what we call viability model. In person I have talked about it. Our viability model addresses issues such as entrepreneur and team. In other words, that's when I talked about the commitment of the entrepreneur. What is his commitment to the business? What is his expertise? What knowledge has he about what he wants to do? And what is his character? Is he somebody who would, we even had that experience. Somebody came and we invested and he made a pledge that he's going to pay us with his receivables. And he went to another lender and pledged the same thing. Unfortunately for the other lender, he didn't conduct his due diligence. If he did, we have a registered all-asset debenture. So going to pledge that means that that other lender, because he didn't do his due diligence, has lent clean. And that's unfortunate. But that says something about the character of that entrepreneur. And I have to say this. I am proud to say that the alumni of Faith Foundation, all those of them that we have had to do business with, not one has failed us. Not one has failed us. As a matter of fact, one of them, Chris Ezeh, the owner of FCI Smiles Ice Cream, he is actually #1 when it comes to our business review reports. So we are very proud of what Faith Foundation is doing. We also look at sales and marketing. Who are your off-takers? We also look at who are your suppliers. So it's important that if you are doing all this, you have to put all this in perspective. Of course, what is your cash flow like? Now, when you have all that, let me state, if you are an SME, if you have not employed up to 150 people in your business, if your asset base is less than $6 million, and if your total annual turnover is less than $15 million, and you have a good character, and you actually mean to invest in your business, come to GroFin. GroFin beckons. We are waiting for you. Thank you.